ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। श्रीन्वतां स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतां नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। नमां विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. I like to seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and thank you for giving me this opportunity to purify myself. Please forgive me for any shortcomings. Today I'll be covering the Canto 4, Chapter 21, verses 8 and 10. Chapter 21 titled Instructions of Maharaj Prithu. So verse 8. Rutavacha तदादिराजस्य यशो विजृम्भितं गुणैरशेषैर्गुणवत् सभाजितं षट्टा महाभागवता सदास्पते कौसारविं प्रह गृणन्ताम् अर्चयन्. Translation by His Divine Grace Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sutta Goswami continued, O Saunaka, leader of the great sages, after hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prudu, the original king, who was fully qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, very submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. Text 9. Vidura Uvacha. So Abhisikta Prudur Viprair Labdashesha Surahana Bibratsa Vaishnavam Tejo Bahor Yabhyam Dudoha Gam. Translation. Vidura said, My dear Brahmana Maitreya, it is very enlightening to understand that King Prudu was enthroned by the great sages and Brahmanas. All the demigods presented him with innumerable gifts, and he also expanded his influence upon personally receiving strength from Lord Vishnu. Thus, he greatly developed the earth. Purport. Because Prudu Maharaja was an empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu and was naturally a great Vaishnava devotee of the Lord. All the demigods were pleased with him and presented different gifts to help him in exercising his royal power. And the great sages and saintly persons also joined in his coronation. Thus, blessed by them, he ruled over the earth, exploited its resources for greatest satisfaction of the people in general. This has already been explained in the previous chapter regarding the activities of King Prudu. As will be apparent from the next verse, every executive head of state should follow in footsteps of Maharaja Prudu in ruling over his kingdom, regardless of whether the chief executive is a king or president or whether the government is monarchical or democratic. This process is so perfect that if it is followed, everyone will become happy. And thus it will be very easy for all to execute devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 10. Konvasya kritim na shrunoti abhijno yadvikramochishtam ashesha bhupa loka sapala उपज्वन्ति कामम् अद्यापि तन्मे वद कर्म शुद्धम्. Translation: Prudu Maharaja was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow in his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prudu Maharaja because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Saint Vidura purpose in hearing about Prudhumaraja over and over again was set an example for ordinary kings and executive heads, who should all be inclined to hear repeatedly about Prudhumaraja's activities in order to also be able to rule over their kingdom or states very faithfully for the peace and prosperity of the people in general. Unfortunately, at the present moment, no one cares to hear about Prudu Maharaja or to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding, although that is sole aim and objective of human life. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरभक्तुंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So we are in the chapter 21, instructions by Puduma Raja. I think first few verses so far covered how well decorated city and how grand welcoming ceremony happened and Puduma Raja's reciprocation. And in the verse 7 talks about Puduma Raja's glorious activities and final destination. He at last obtained lotus feet of supreme personality of Godhead, and also it is said that it's king's duty to see that everyone perfectly executes the duties of prescribed for the varna and ashrama divisions of the society. So besides that, exemplified by King Prudu, he must develop the earth for the greatest possible production of the food grains. So coming to the verse 8 to 10, it talks about how Vidura requests to hear more about Prudumara's activities, because hearing about pure devotees and glories of devotees and Krishna's pastime is always it one can never be satisfied. They want to hear more and more. Here, here Rudra wants to hear more and more about King Prudu and how he ruled, how he become exemplary for everybody. And here in the verse, it talks about while talking to Sudha Goswami, while talking to Vidura, Vidura is a saintly devotee, offer respectable obeisances to Maitreya, leader of the great sages, states that unlimited qualities of original king Prudu Maharaja reputation were highly praised, and his reputation that is his original king, he was very highly qualified, and his qualities are unlimited, and is also being praised by everyone. And these are the uh, qualities of great leader, you know and also with the mercy of the Lord he can able to uh, rule this kingdom very ideally and also become an example for everyone. And in the verse 9, Vidura addressing Maitreya highlights enlightening fact that King Pruda was enthroned by sages and brahmanas, received the gift from demigods, gained the strength from Lord, and thus he is expanding his influence and greatly benefiting the world. Here, if you see, you know, um, King Prudu, where he was enthroned by sages, and it's also been welcomed by brahmanas, receiving the gift from demigod with all the things. He can also he got a blessings from Lord Vishnu. That's how he's ruling it and become a great ruler. And here Vidura emphasizing that Prudu kingship not merely as a result of his own ambition, but also obtained by the great sages, ordained by great sages and brahmanas, and which signifies his legitimacy and divine sanctions. And here it also says demigod showered Prudu Maharaj with gifts. He also received direct strength from Lord Vishnu, and including the divine favor power that supports his reign. And in the verse 10, it talks about summarizes how Pruthumara's actions and his methods ruling were so exemplary, and kings and demigods on various planets still follow his example. I think when it was written, this happened in Bhagavatam, but now I think we don't see any of that being followed, or people don't even know that what to follow and whom they can take as an example. Um, and also his actions were considered pious and auspicious, making his story and principle, he upheld worthy of being remembered and followed. And as the speaker expressed a strong desire to learn more about Prithvi Maharaj activities, highlighted their importance and speaker reverence for example. So, and here Prithvi Maharaj is presented as a model ruler who, despite being a Kshatriya, he also embodies the qualities of Brahmana. So, being able to both protect and guide his people. So, so Prabhupada um, talk about how some of the reasons why uh, self-centered materialists, current rulers incapable of bringing about a peace and harmonious in the world society. So the three things Prabhupada pointed out in his article was, one is he has no sense of spiritual brotherhood. The materialistic leader can never bring harmony to the society because he failed to see the spiritual unity of all mankind. Preoccupied with his with superficial distinctions such as race, class, and nationality, he cannot understand all living beings are his brothers. Being children of God, the Supreme Father, as Lord Krishna puts in his Bhagavad Gita 4:35. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are part of me, and they are in me and are mine. So, and second reason Prabhupada quoted was, the current leaders or materialistic person has one-side view of life. Instead of using his influence to bring about social conditions favorable for both spiritual and as well as economical development, so the materialist only considers the economic development to be all in all. Thus, he only promotes the creation of artificial environment that is far from peaceful, contemplative, and are helpful. So, devoid of this spiritual culture, the people become alienated from God, nature, and each other. And the more alienated, materialistic the people get, the more frustration, angry, bewildered by they become. Thus, the materialistic leader takes people on a progressive march to a hellish existence. He is ambitious and self-serving. So, this is another reason why current leaders are failing to, bring harmony and make the whole world peaceful or people peaceful in this life. And also the materialist politicians having neglected the spiritual side of life is never satiated in his drive for power and position, since his number one consideration is his own political advancement, his continual campaign for office. After winning the election, he is afraid of being removed from his position. He's so preoccupied with fear of losing his job, status, power, wealth, and then that this fear itself, not love or actual concern for the people. This is the primary motivation for his activities. So materialistic leaders merely merchants trading empty promises for votes, and people naturally distrust them. Everyone knows that slave merchant must be watched very carefully. Even when offering a good bargain, he ultimately was his own bank balance in his mind. And another, I think, third point Prabhupada mentioning was he is always disturbed and offer irrational, because materialistic politician is not at peace with himself. He cannot help others find peace. So either individually or collectively, unable to realize that all his political ambitions, he is often subject to deep inner frustration, which may cause him to behave irrationally. So a person in such a disturbed state of mind cannot have a clear intelligence needed to solve today's complex problem. So even if his mind is razor sharp, his decision never will be clear if his heart is infected with self desires. So a crooked politician may be intellectually astute, but an envious person with a sharp mind is like a poisonous snake with a beautiful jewel on his forehead. So the snake is still dangerous despite its fancy ornaments. So his perception is blurred. So due to pressure of power, many of the today's leaders try to forget their miseries by dimming their awareness with intoxicants like alcohol, caffeine or nicotine, and he neglects the God laws. Today politicians are too busy wheeling and dealing to pay much attention to the laws of God. As Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita 3.21, whatever action great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all world will pursue. So a good leader must be an ideal example for people to admire and try to follow. If he is able to set the standards of perfect behavior, then people will naturally incline to follow. Therefore, he must obey God's laws and also possess godly qualities himself. Of course, many politicians go to church and publicly declare that their piety, but a person is known, however, not by his word but by his deeds. Certain qualities must be present in a worthy leader, and certain ones must be absent. For instance, a spiritually enlightened leader is free from lust, anger, and greed. Also strong in his determination, he is gentle, compassionate, and ready to respect others. Above all, he actually follows the God's laws. He does not simply proclaim himself to be pious, then act sinfully beyond the range of TV cameras. So there are just few reasons why a material person is unqualified to be a leader of society. So and people also want material gain because they have no spiritual information. If I take care of my shirt very nicely but I don't take care of the person inside the shirt, what is my position? Similarly, the whole material world is busy taking care of their body, not the soul inside the body. So the solution is to first all to understand that your spirit and find out what is the relationship with God and act accordingly. This then the goal of human be life. As long as we ignore our relationship with the God and remain caught up in the pursuit of material wealth, physical comforts, um, one cannot be satisfied, and we will be in this cycle of birth and death and going through all the miseries. So the Rudrasura says in his prayers, you want to be aham are tava padaika mula dasanu daso bhavitasmi bhuya. So this verse gives a summon substance of a devotional life. One must first become a servant of the Lord. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, he also showed us by his example, a living entity should always desire to be a servant of Krishna, the maintainer of gopis. This means that one must accept spiritual master who comes in disciplic succession and is a servant of servants of Lord. Under his direction, one must engage one's three properties, namely his body and mind and words. The body should be engaged in physical activity under the order of master. Mind should think about Krishna incessantly. The word should be engaged in preaching the Krishna consciousness. So that's how one can fulfill the purpose of this life, and also one can, even if one can become a leader, he should follow the same, so that he can rule it properly and bring the God conscious in the society, instill the spirituality and uh, laws of Lord to in the society as well, so that way everyone can become happy. And so I think with this I can conclude today's session. Please forgive me for any shortcomings. Vancha kalpatarubhasya krupa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo